Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Trisha George, and I am the Educational Director for Thinkalong. It is a tool to help you bring media literacy and critical thinking skills to your classrooms. Really excited to be here today with my colleague, Melissa Tom. I think that we have a lot to offer, particularly social studies teachers, particularly at this time. So we're really excited to be here with you today. We can share the slides. You can read about my background if that is interesting to you. Right now, I'm finishing an educational doctorate at the University of Connecticut. I have been with Connecticut Public since March, but a lover of all things public media and education for well over a decade now. You can find me at Electricity on Twitter, and you can email me during, not before, I guess at this point, during or after this presentation at tgeorge@ctpublic.org.
And my name is Melissa Tom, and I am very excited to be with you here as well. I'm actually on location. I am in Minnesota right now with my family for a little while, but I teach in a middle school in West Hartford at Bristol Middle School. I am a teacher librarian. This is my 6th year. And before that, I was a social studies teacher and an elementary teacher. I was part of the Connecticut Council for Social Studies Board for a couple of years as well. And I see some familiar names in the audience. So hello to everyone who I know personally, and welcome to everybody new. I also went to UConn in the last few years to get a degree in gifted development or gifted education and talent development. And I think that this tool of Thinkalong that CT Public has put together is a really invaluable resource that all educators everywhere need to know about. So I'm really glad Trisha and I could be here today with all of you to share its wonderfulness. And so this is kind of our plan of action. And just to get started though, we really do want it to be participatory. So I'm hoping that you will turn on your mics when we ask for specific feedback from you. Feel free to turn on your camera so we can see your faces. And this is kind of how we're going to progress. So since it is such a small audience right now, we would love to have you introduce yourselves to the rest of us, just to kind of get to know who you are, where you're coming from. I love this graphic. This was all Trisha. So kind of tell us a little bit about where you are teaching, if you are teaching right now, or what your position is, and why you are here today. We would love to hear from you. So kind of I can call on people if you want in the order I see you on my screen, or you can just introduce yourself right now. So go ahead. Who's going to be the first brave soul?
I can go first for you, Melissa. So I am Rachel Riendo, and I feel for you going for your doctorate over there. I just finished mine up last year, and it's a bit intense. But I'm a general department head, and I teach social studies for the technical high school system in Windham.
Very cool. Brenda, do you want to introduce yourself? You're next on my list of names.
Hi, sure. I am a first-year teacher in the Bridgeport Public Schools District. I teach at Bass Lake High School, and I just recently graduated this past spring from Southern Connecticut State University.
And am I correct? Did you just win an award?
I did.
Your name looked familiar. Congratulations, that's so awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for introducing yourself.
Yep.
And how about Mary? Are you there and able to introduce yourself to us? Well, we'll come back to Mary if you want to introduce yourself. What about Katie?
Hi, folks. I'm Katie Eber. I am part of the Thinkalong team at Connecticut Public. I'm also a huge media literacy nerd, and I'm a poet and a writer and an educator. So here to answer any questions in the chat if anybody has any, and pass them along to Melissa and Trisha.
Awesome. I'm so glad you could be here with us. Katie is awesome, so please do put questions that you have as they come up in the chat if you don't want to turn on your mic and ask with your voice. She's like very astute in leading structured discussions, which is something we're going to talk about a little bit later on. So glad you're here, Katie. The next one says Corinne O and Keefe.
Yeah, sorry, every time you put an apostrophe, like
that's what happens.
Yeah. My name's Corinne. I'm a graduate student at Eastern University. I'm doing my master's in education with certification for secondary social studies.
Very cool. I'm so glad you're here. And what about Brian? I see you on here twice, Brian. I think it's the same person.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm in there twice, but yeah, I'm a social studies teacher at Bullard Havens Technical High School in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I teach 9th and 10th grade world history and civics.
Excellent. We have 2 Bridgeport teachers here. That's fabulous. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
John Hatfield? No? All right. Well, Mary and John, if you want to at any point tell us who you are. I know who you are, Mary, but maybe other people might not. Put your stuff in the chat and we will just get to know you that way. So I'm so glad all of you are here. We have a great...
Hi, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's Mary Skelly. I'm a board member and a former educator working for the Connecticut Technical High Schools, and I am helping out now with at Central and Southern, working with student teachers there. So excellent. Nice to meet everybody.
Glad you're here, Mary. All right, so we're gonna continue on kind of with the agenda. We're gonna kind of do a little intro. Trisha's gonna give us a little bit of background on Thinkalong. Then we're gonna really go through how to use it. We're gonna model the website. We're gonna dig in a little bit. We're gonna give you an opportunity to explore on your own, on your computer if you choose to, or we'll kind of guide you through some on the screen and walk you through some of the stuff that you're gonna find on the website. It is thinkalong.org if you do want to start browsing at any point. We're going to talk about the research behind it, because sometimes our administrators, that's really important that they know where this stuff is coming from and why we are trying to promote it, and that it is reliable and credible. And as a librarian, that is something that is very important to me as well. We will have lots of time for question and answers throughout and at the end, and then just some closing thoughts. So I think we're ready to get started. Oh, Trisha, you are on mute if you are talking. I'm not sure. I don't see you.
Oh, I definitely wasn't talking yet.
Okay. Well, you should be.
I know. So some of the most important stuff to know about Thinkalong, we wanted to put right up front. The most important thing is that it's free because it's an educational service of Connecticut Public. As the public media station serving Connecticut, our journalists and our team here think that it is of the utmost importance to ensure that we are doing media literacy education. When you're putting media out into the world, you also kind of have a responsibility to ensure that the public understands how to take that media in, how to analyze that media, and use it for the greater good. This tool is particularly powerful because it uses a media literacy framework based on the research from the Center for Media Literacy. So Tessa Joels runs that organization nationally. We work really closely with her to embed the 5 key questions of media literacy into the structure of Thinkalong. We'll talk more later about the proof that Thinkalong works, because there is actual research out there that demonstrates the efficacy of this design. But for right now, we just want you to know that we've done our due diligence, we've done our homework, and we know that this is a thing that helps young people build media literacy skills. The The other thing that's really important for educators in Connecticut is that this meets the state of Connecticut student data privacy policy, and is actually even listed on the Connecticut Learning Hub, the place where the State Department of Education thinks and wants people to go for anytime, anywhere learning. In addition to being free, we do not collect any kind of registration information, so no email and password necessary, and we don't track users. So we're not collecting any kind of identifying information for folks when they come to the site at all, which makes it really safe. Student privacy is of real importance, and I think after the keynote addressed today, we recognize even more so the importance of making sure that young people are safe online. So without any further ado, we will ask you to please visit thinkalong.org if you are able.
I did
I will be going
in the chat directly, so you can click right in the chat and it will open up a new browser for our window for you if you want to follow along. And Trisha's going to navigate there on our screen, and I'm going to just give us a little bit of a tour. Katie, feel free to chime in at any point if there's something you want to add that we are not saying right now. So when you do get to thinkalong.org, the thing that I loved when I first saw the website is it's just a very nicely laid out, organized, aesthetically pleasing website. It's very clean in its design, and you see right away that there's some main parts to this website. So at the top, go up a little bit, Trisha, it's the 1, 2, and the 3. And on Twitter, I do want to say that our handle is Thinkalong123. And the reason we chose that is because there are 3 steps in every module that we will follow as we engage with the topics and modules with our students. So it's investigate, contemplate, and debate. And we're going to go through each of those sections as we progress through this presentation and demonstration. And then once you go down through, you're going to see that there are topics in the form of questions, modules. So should we defund the police? Is money speech? Those are a couple of the newer ones. Should face masks be federally mandated? And you can go through there's many, many different topics that have already been created. So we are gonna really spend some time on one specific one in a few moments and just go through what it looks like, both as what the students will see and engage with, and how you as a teacher we have some tools for teachers that will help you plan and deliver this experience to your students. And one thing, if you could go to the very top, Trisha, of the website, one thing I want to point your attention to is that menu up there. And if you click the start, there's 2 really important links that I have used a lot when I engage with this website. The first is it has structuring discussions. And this is a tool that can be used across multiple disciplines, but especially within social studies when we are talking about civil discourse and how do you engage young people in these types of conversations in a way that's going to be both safe and a positive experience, even if not everybody is agreeing with each other, because everybody has their own opinions. And what Thinkalong strives to do is help students create informed opinions, which the informed part is often what is missing from social dialogue as of late. And the other link that you can click on is media literacy resources. And this gives you a few additional tools that we find to be really valuable, reliable, credible. And some of you are going to be familiar with a lot of these. The Facing History in Ourselves is something that I bet most of you has probably accessed for different purposes. So definitely make sure that you add that to your favorites list. And the 5 key questions of media literacy, that is something that we are going to talk about more in depth as well. And that's part of the foundation of Thinkalong's tool in general. So if you click back on topics, it will bring you to the topics page, and you can scroll through and see all topics in the main view. Or if you're looking for a specific subtopic, you can search by that way. So Trisha's hovering over education. If she clicks that, she's going to find all the different topics and modules that have something to do with education. So there's a couple different ways you can navigate. There's also the search bar at the top that you could utilize if you are looking for something specific as well. So should we lower the voting age is probably a topic that people have been talking about as of late. And look, there is a module on that, lo and behold. So I think this is a point, right, Tricia, that we're gonna get a little more into this, and we're gonna, yeah. And in the chat, I would love to hear if you actually navigated to this website. Just let us know if you got there or not. It's not a big deal if you don't, but it is really kind of nice to just kind of get there yourself and see what is there and make sure that you know how to get back there for future use. So. All right. Yay! Rachel bookmarked it. Fabulous. All right. So Tricia, do you want to go start our deeper dive into this topic of should we lower the voting age?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we start looking at this, we're going to talk kind of broadly about what we're seeing so that you understand exactly what we were intending each part to be used as. Each module, like Melissa mentioned, is guided by a kind of grounding question. Then we move into a summary, a very broad summary of the information that is actually available in each of these pieces of content. When you get down here to the teacher's guide, there are kind of two ways that you can really utilize the teacher's guide. There are two ways that you can kind of participate in the next part of this is what I want to say. The teacher's guide, as you can see, will offer a summary of each of the pieces of media. There are 3 primary pieces of media in each Thinkalong module. For this one, we have a short video called Should We Let 12-Year-Olds Vote? We have a short audio piece called Unlikely Advocates Push to Give 16-Year-Olds a Vote and a Voice. And a short read called Should 16-Year-Olds Be Allowed to Vote? Now, each of these 3 pieces of media are from a public media resource. They have been vetted by educators to make sure that they are age appropriate, to make sure that they represent diverse perspectives, which can mean a lot of different things when you're limiting yourself to 3 pieces of media. But we do try to really include a range of perspectives on each of these discussions. And then, in addition to these 3 primary pieces of media that you can find summaries of in the teacher's guide, which there is a link to the teacher's guide in the chat, we also provide some keywords that you can pull out and use as focused discussion tools, right? So if your students aren't certain what the word enfranchisement means, it's probably good to address that before they really dive into these pieces of media so that they understand them. In addition,
nope. Go ahead if you want to.
I was just going to point out the Think Deeper section also. The Think Deeper section is usually 3 to 7 resources that take a bit of a deeper dive. The 3 pieces of media we really feel like can be used as blended learning. You could present these in classrooms for young folks to watch. And then the Think Deeper really dives into groups who are actively addressing these things right now, research that has been done that gets a little bit more quantitative in nature, and then sometimes very powerful, like anecdotal stories that are clearly closer to opinion pieces, but still keep the focus on the core question that we're asking.
And something from my teacher point of view that I really do like about the way that they've set up both the teacher guide as well as just the media that they put on those 3 pieces that they choose. And again, every module has 3 different types of media connected to the topic of that question. So the format is very similar with all the different topics. And just to kind of think about, how am I as a teacher going to prepare my students to engage in this activity? How are we going to build background knowledge? And that goes with that vocabulary that Tricia mentioned. It identifies some of the things that we anticipate that students are probably going to need a little background building on, or a little bit of an anticipatory guide that you can use with that. And Tricia also talked about, once you kind of make that general identification of what you're going to need to pre-teach, then you move into actually, how are we going to get the students to consume this content, and in what ways? And some strategies that we suggested could be, you jigsaw the information, where you put students in small groups and you assign them one of those pieces of media that they watch as a small group and come back and do a share out with everybody. You could also do a shared experience, depending on how much time you had, and depending if you were all virtual or if you were hybrid. So I think that is another thing that I really have gotten a lot of use out of, is we are hybrid right now in my district, and we have a very large potential of probably going virtual in sometime in the next month. And this website will be a very valuable tool in either one of those situations. And so one of the things that we were going to try to do as part of the participation of our session is, how do you think you could get students to prepare for this experience? So I know we had some high school teachers. I'm a middle school librarian. We have some people who are in secondary or at the university in positions of working with pre-service teachers. We have a bunch of different perspectives in our small group here. So what are some ways that you might suggest that students would help get just prepared for this structured discussion? And if you want to turn on your mic and share with your voice, I would love to hear it. If you want to put it in the chat, that's okay too. So what do people think? How would you have students prepare using these resources?
I'm sorry, I just had a question though about them as well.
Yeah, of course.
Are they meant to be accessible to any age group, or are there like recommended ages per lesson?
That's a great question. And Tricia, Tricia might be able to answer that more specifically. I do know that the website itself is really geared towards secondary, grades 6 through 12. That's kind of the sweet spot for the content and the information. And as far as each individual lesson, Tricia, or each module?
Yeah, so there are some modules on here that might be considered kind of like needing a low trust threshold, that are also like slightly simpler topics to debate and could be appropriate for, say, 4th and 5th graders, maybe even 3rd graders. For instance, should the school week be 4 days instead of 5? I think, should we lower the voting age is probably an okay topic for those kids too. Some of this, I think, is not age appropriate, maybe just in the weight of the subject matter, but there are actually resources available through public media that do address those earlier elementary and late elementary kind of learning goals around media literacy. And we can share those out. The Center for Media Literacy actually has worked on another version of the 5 key questions and concepts so that it is applicable for those younger grades. Because the earlier we start, the better off we are. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, thanks.
Any other questions or any ideas of how, if your wheels are turning, how you might prepare your students for the structured discussions? What strategies would you use? Or what would lend itself the best? I do have pretty good wait time, but just interrupt me if you want to share, because I do really want to hear what you think, especially the people educators who are working with students on a day-to-day basis. But the other thing that I don't know if Trisha mentioned this in this presentation, but we've talked about the idea of the flipped learning model. And flipped classrooms are definitely something that I think all educators should and need to be familiar with, especially now since last March, when that was a reality for everybody, that was something they were having to do. And I think that the media on each of the modules lends itself very well to assigning it to students to do on their own, and then come back and have the guided discussion or the structured discussions when you have that time, screen time or face-to-face time in your classroom. So the flipped model, I think, is another really great model that this website can work very well within. And then the other question that I have, if people have any thoughts, is what are some possible challenges that you might experience just in, like, as a social studies teacher in today's day and age that maybe this website could help with? Is there any specific challenges that you have had, or that other teachers have, that this site might help address?
Melissa, it's Katie.
Hi, Katie.
I know one of the things that having talked to a lot of teachers about things like this and having debates in their classroom is that a lot of times they might be worried that students will come with information that they haven't fully vetted, right? Because part of the point of Thinkalong is to be able to help guide them through those media literacy questions and helping them understand how to vet sources, right? It's one of the things that we start to kind of do in middle school as we start to do more research projects, and there are benchmarks for that, right? So being able to have students be engage in a structured discussion using the same pieces of media all together, and that they're bound by those, three pieces of media plus the think deeper articles and resources. It really allows for them to start building those media literacy skills, especially for middle schoolers. And it's super important. It's just such a good way to address those issues early for students.
Thank you, because that is exactly right. And one of the things that I just remembered as you were talking, Katie, is in an earlier presentation, somebody had mentioned that he had a student come to his classroom this week, and they were talking about the election, and the student had made some comment about how just the voting and the counting and some of that stuff that we've been seeing in different media outlets about that there's things that are going on that there shouldn't be, and some of that misinformation or that pollution of information, as somebody in another session at my other conference referred to it as. And I think that is also something, what Katie said, is that students are using the same resources and engaging in the same content, but coming at it, adding their own personal perspectives and experiences. And I think that is what makes for such a rich discussion, and it levels the playing field in the sense that you're not having these other ideas come in from right or left field that derails a conversation in a classroom. So I think that is also something that, because that is a challenge that I've experienced, where we'll be talking about a topic that has a lot of emotions behind it and many different perspectives, and it just gets derailed because somebody makes some offhanded comment that really isn't connected directly to the topic at hand, but it gets us off track. And I think that those three media sources and the supplemental things that have been curated can really help guide that discussion and give students those tools so that in the future they will be able to do that curation part better on their own, but they'll have that discussion, those discussion strategies kind of under their belt, so to speak. So no, I think that's good. If anybody else wants to chime in at any point, I highly encourage you. I really like participation. All right, so we can go on to the next. What do we have next? Ooh.
I did want to mention one more thing that was brought up actually by the State Department of Education, and that is educators needing to be able to tie particular activities to Common Core state standards. So right now, it is definitely a gap on the website that we don't actually show what standards each of these modules is attached to. However, we are putting up modules on Teachers Pay Teachers that are aligned with particular Common Core state standards. They just happen to have one of the easier interfaces to do that alignment very quickly. So I do want you to know that these are aligned with Common Core state standards, quite a few in speaking and listening, especially when you're using them as structured discussions, but also in civics and the social studies history side of things. So moving on, ooh, too fast. So like we said earlier, Thinkalong activities are informed by the 5 core concepts or the 5 key questions from the Center for Media Literacy. These are actually placed at the bottom of every single module. And when you go to the website, you see that scrolling over them actually flips them around. And I'm going to go ahead and actually just do that so that you can see all of the questions. And again, I want to talk about 2 different ways to use this. The first one is to use it within the module to address any opinions that might have been missing, to address any kind of marketing techniques that are used to attract folks' attention or make them feel a certain way. But the other way to do that is for those kind of off the wall things that a young person brings to you. Like, having worked in education, I have definitely had kids walk up to me and say, hey, I read this on the internet and now it's true in my head. So this is an opportunity to respond and say, oh, well, who created that thing that you just brought to me? I'm just curious who made that. You know, and you can dive into that a little bit more too. So what is this a part of? Is it like the same or different than other, you know, news sites? And how is it different from other news sites? So these things can really build on top of each other so that young people are practicing those critical thinking skills over and over and over again. And going back to the presentation, that is really where the proof is. Young folks who use these questions to analyze media over and over again, so multiple times over the course of the school year, are better able to answer these questions themselves and better able to identify media that might have misinformation or disinformation at its core. I really do, at the risk of pushing people to a different website, medialit.org has a ton of research and additional tools to help get you on the media literacy path.
And one thing I just want to add for this slide is that these 5 questions also are completely transferable to any topic when you're talking about, is it credible, is it reliable, is it real, how do you know what to believe? And as a librarian, these are questions that I used, and this model, when I found it on the website and once I started to really look at it, this is what now I as a librarian do when I go into classrooms and I work on those types of skills with the teachers. So at your school, if you have a librarian, you should be collaborating with him or her, and if you don't have a librarian, you should be advocating for one. And this is something that should be just shared widely because it's such a powerful tool. I use it both in my professional life as an educator and in my personal life with family and friends who sometimes share questionable information via various places. So just if you get nothing else out of this presentation, take this and share it widely. But you're going to get lots of other stuff out of this presentation.
So once you have kind of the investigate and contemplate options, set up before you. So we've put the pieces of media there. They're curated, they're age appropriate, you know, they're safe for young people to be reading, and they're directly related to the topic and come from a variety of perspectives. Then you have the kind of deeper thinking opportunities, and you've contemplated those sources. Like, you know why that source was made, you know who made it, and you know what the point of that person making that media was to them. So you've analyzed what you've got. Now there are a dozen different ways that you can use Thinkalong, and we want to help figure out what the right way is for you to use Thinkalong. So we have one option kind of baked into the website, the pro arguments and the con arguments. I'm going back to the website, y'all. I can't fully, whoops, that's the back side of the website. So once you go in here, there are actually some really useful graphic organizers in here that you can use and that students can use. So when you're going through each of these topics, we have found it really useful to have young people go resource by resource and summarize the main ideas of each one, right? So at first, we're not asking them to make any kind of value judgment about what it is they're reading or watching or listening to. We just want them to comprehend what it is that they heard. What is the title of it? When was it published? And this is not one of the 5 key questions, but it is something we pay really close attention to, especially in such a quick moving media season, if you will. After we get through this kind of investigate worksheet, then it comes time to really apply these questions. And there is space to answer each of the questions very specifically for each of the media pieces. And then if you wanted to do this again with the other Think Deeper pieces, the extension resources, if you will, absolutely just fill out another one. Now that you've contemplated these resources, you can come right here and you have all of the information that you need to make an informed opinion. So we're actually not in the voting age one. I'll get there real quick. And this works the same on everyone, but I didn't, for some reason, want to submit these questions for something else. So should we lower the voting age? Some of the pro arguments that you might hear is policies and politicians impact young people, so they should have a voice. I have another pro argument. I'm not going to spend too much time thinking them up, but then say I come up with one con argument. Voting is a big responsibility for a child. And then you can submit your response. And what that actually does is create a PDF. And it's not a beautiful PDF, but it is a document that demonstrates a young person's pro arguments and con arguments. It's totally possible to leave Thinkalong right here, but we think that the most impactful part of this is actually what comes after, which is the vote. I'm sorry, not the vote, but the debate or discussion. Something that we heard from teachers pretty early on is that the word debate is a little bit scary. Sometimes the debate can get heated. It's a little charged in this environment. And we all know that, so I can stop talking about it because we all feel it. So on our website, instead of calling it a debate, we ended up calling it a structured discussion because that's really what it is. We've done the trouble of giving young people the information that they need. We've helped them to organize their thoughts. We've helped them to turn those thoughts into opinions. And now we're going to set them up in a way that they can present those opinions in a way that makes a lot of sense. So this is really just the 1 through 7 of what you'll find on the website. And the website does have a bit more explanation around it, but it's the way that we recommend doing this. And I think actually
the direct link into the chat, so you can get there from the chat as well.
Awesome. And I think also I want to share that we kind of quickly turned that website into a PDF. So you can download the PDF. Also, I put that link in the chat, and it just is a single page that walks you through how to structure a discussion. And Katie is really the expert on this. So if I do it wrong, just pony up and let me know, okay? So the first thing you want to do is take a poll, because you're curious. Where do young people stand? Should we lower the voting age or should we not? You're going to assign pro-con teams, and it's important to do this not very long before you have the structured discussion. The goal is really for young people to take in all of the information so that they could argue, debate, so that they could discuss either side. They could take on that perspective and really present an argument for either side. Give them some time once they've been assigned, especially if it's something that they're not super looking forward to arguing for. And it's best if it's in teams. Give each side uninterrupted time to make a claim. Then give each side uninterrupted time to ask questions. Give the teams time to discuss the questions and respond to the questions. And then take another poll to see if anybody's mind had shifted since the beginning of the discussion. And that's kind of, I know that that is an oversimplification. We ran as a virtual structured discussion about a week ago now. And it is, yeah, and it can be a real challenge, but in the end, it was incredibly useful. People were really interested in seeing how people interpreted different parts of the text, and it was really interesting to see how people who did not want to argue their side still managed to make some pretty solid points because they had prepared.
And I think too, Tricia, this is Katie. Melissa just asked if anyone's used debate or structured discussions in their classrooms. I did this with a group of college freshmen a few years back, and I did not actually assign them pro-con sides until, well, I assigned them before, and it was part of a research project they were doing. And I think, having done think-alongs in class, it works better to not assign that. Because one, at this point they're all using the same media pieces, and they're not doing that research legwork, but it's a good jumping off point for that, so if students are assigned pro-con or go through the structured discussion, your next step could be something like, okay, now that you've done this, it's time to do your own research and apply what you've learned with Thinkalong and really move kind of the goalpost for them so that they keep building on these skills, and now they have to do it on their own, but they have the tools. And I really like that about the structured discussions, it's a safe place for them to do it in class with their peers and with the crutches of having other students around them to help prop them up, especially on their teams. So I really think that part of the structured discussion is the teamwork that goes into it, and then the ability to move on with it is just a great feature of it.
Thank you so much, Katie.
Is anybody else that's in the audience, have you had any experiences with this type of activity? I feel like in high school that happens maybe more often than in some middle schools. I'm not sure, but if you have any anecdotes, we'd love to hear them. So just feel free to put in the chat or chime in. Because we're going to ask you some more thoughts, so get your juices flowing, because I don't want us to be talking to one another, Trisha and I. And I might just cold call somebody, so get ready. I'm going to use that strategy of calling on people. But one of the things also we would really like to brainstorm is, what are some guiding questions that you would love to see featured in Thinkalong? Because it's maybe a topic that you are really struggling to address, or you just would like to find some credible, reliable resources that you don't have time to look for on your own maybe. So what are some of those guiding questions? And we saw a couple of the examples we already have on the website. Should the voting age be lowered? One of them that we might not have seen, but should the Electoral College, be abolished? I don't know how it's stated on the website, but it has to do with, should the Electoral College continue? There was one that we had posted around Indigenous Peoples Day back in October of, should it be changed to Indigenous Peoples Day instead of Columbus Day? Lots of different subtopics that we could come up with. Rachel put in the comment that I often like to refer to debate as deliberation, with the idea that we come to a common ground versus a point of contention. This makes the term debate a little less intimidating. So that, I like that too, that idea of.
We'll be adding that to our list of words that we use.
Yes. Thanks, Rachel. What about Brian or Rachel? I think, were you the two teachers in Bridgeport, I believe, in high schools? Do you have any experience? I know Rachel said she was a first-year teacher, and it's really only November.
Wasn't me that was the first year. I think it's Brenda's the first-year teacher in Bridgeport. Brian and I both teach in the tech system, though. So
sorry, Rachel. I was looking at Brenda's name, but I was looking at your comment. Do you want to share, Brenda? You said yes, I. I don't know if you hit enter too soon. So have you had any experience with this, Brenda? You had a pretty interesting first few months with the variety of things with COVID and the election season. Being a social studies teacher, that's probably extra stressful because it sort of falls on you sometimes in that department to address some of the topics that come up in an election season. Was there anything that did come up, or did it really not you didn't really do much with it this year?
I wasn't going to unmute myself because it might be a little bit noisy now, but I've been trying to kind of incorporate it into what we're doing. I'm teaching World Civ, so it might not be a direct link, but I'm trying to show them clips. I show them clips of the debates. I'm having them look at, we're talking about the election every day and trying to update them as the results come in or don't come in. So I'm trying to keep them up to date with what's going on, even though it might not be like the direct link between what's going on here in the elections and what we're learning about now in World Civ.
That's a challenge, though. I mean, that is a challenge, and good job for trying to include that, because we know that your time is limited when you have your class, and you're like you said, it's not directly connected with the content in some ways, but that idea of current events is something that I think a lot of social studies teachers work in, no matter what topic that they are addressing in a certain grade level. So thank you for sharing. I put you on the spot totally, so thank you so much.
Did you want me to add something as well?
I would love for you to add something. This is Brian.
Sorry. Yeah, this is Brian. So there's, I guess, two different approaches we've taken to that sort of thing. We've done some claim testing where we look at some claims that have been made, whether it's a headline in a periodical or it's something it's been said in a soundbite in the news, and tried to research to see what is, if it's a true claim or not, and the evidence we can find to back it up or debunk it. And then the others we would look at is sourcing. We looked at where the source of information is coming from, and is it a credible source, and things like that. So those are two kind of two-pronged approach that we've taken to trying to determine if things are credible or true or different things like that.
That's great. And I hope you check out that part of the website with the 5 core questions, because I think that will help with that work and give you a specific tool for the students to utilize as well. So thank you for sharing. Anybody else want to chime in? Not yet. All right. Does anybody have any ideas for additional types of questions that you would want to see? Because one of the cool things about this website also is that this is a year that it is really getting a lot of attention and getting added to. Content is being built actively all the time. And if there is a topic that you are really hoping to have on this website that is not yet there, all you have to do is let one of us know, and it will probably start getting developed. So we know how crazy busy classroom teachers are. I see my teachers working so hard, and as a librarian, I try to do all that I can. And so this is something that I've shared, this website I've shared with them, and I've also shared with them that if there's something that you need that you don't have or you don't have time to find, let me know, and then I pass it on and get Trisha and her team to work on it. So if there is something now that is in the front of your mind, or in the future, in a month from now, in 2 months from now, if you are working in some content and you're like, oh, I really wish that I had information on whatever this topic is, should absentee ballots continue to be used is a question that comes into my brain in this time that we are facing right now. And so I think that is something I want you to be actively participating in, and involve your students as well. Ask your students, what are the questions? Like, what are the topics that they would really want to have a discussion, a structured discussion, or a deliberation, as Rachel has so eloquently put it. What would you like to deliberate on? What are some of the topics that are important to you as students? And share that back with us. We can be that direct connection. So I don't know if anybody has anything to chime in on that or not yet.
I do also want to say, we got a grant. And that's why we're so flashy this year. It's very exciting. But that also means that we have staff available. So Alexis is not here right now, but Katie and Melissa, myself, and Alexis are all available. If you want a module made, that's something that we can do. If you want guidance presenting this to a content team at your middle school, we can help with that. If you are interested in getting support in structuring a discussion with your class, we can also help with that. The awesome thing is that we are available to you. So if there is something that you want to do, something that you want to see, we're here to be responsive to that while continuing to develop continue developing a really stellar tool that can help young people build critical media literacy skills.
Yes, please use us.
So I think this is a slightly smaller group than we were expecting, not too chit-chatty, so it looks like we're going to be done relatively early. We have time for a question and answer session, and before we do that, because I'm not sure that there's going to be question and answers, because we've been asking for the whole time, and I feel like we've pretty much addressed all of the stuff that has come up so far. So please, if you do have a question, or if you think you have an answer, we're open to hearing all of them. But before you leave, I would like to ask you to do us a quick favor. We are doing some, I guess it would probably be called market research, though it's really just a survey I put together and that we're sending out and doing some analysis. What we're really interested in is how we can best access teachers and other educators, and how, like I said, we can kind of form this tool to meet your very specific needs. In the chat, I put a link to a quick survey. I think you are probably all Connecticut based, so if you fill out this survey, you will actually receive like a giant awesome prize in the mail. We're calling them Crit Kits. They get sent out with some purple headphones, some purple pencils and pens, dry erase markers, a kind of sleek and cool backpack, and some color in zines that demonstrate the 5 key questions as they are for deconstructing media and constructing media. Also some stickers and things. So tons of swag and some tools to be using in your school or in your virtual world.
I agree.
I can't wait till our packing party when we all get to actually see each other like in 3D and pack them up and send them out. So please do take that survey if you have an opportunity. We really appreciate it. If you go to our website right now, we're also going to ask you to take the survey because we think it's that important.
Yes, thank you everybody for being here. I really hope that we stay connected. If you are active on Twitter, definitely follow Thinkalong. It's at Thinkalong123, and I am at Miss Tom Bokaitis. And if you are not on Twitter, this is my little plug for Twitter. I know that the powers that be sometimes make it seem like it's an evil force. However, it is not. And if we use it for the power of good, it can be a really powerful connector. So that is how I really stay in touch with the professional community. It's my learning network, and I would love to connect with you there. And there's so many amazing resources that I find every week via Twitter from my various the organizations. I think Trisha mentioned the News Literacy Project. That was a website we shared. They have amazing content for educators. They have complete units that you really can take and use as is, or you can use and tweak. And one final plug for please collaborate with your librarian.